I'm going to tell you guys about RapidApp, which is a web framework that we've been developing in-house for the past 5 years. Is the microphone up? Good. A framework that we've been developing for the last 5 years, and we just started open sourcing over the past year. So it's, we've used this in-house to develop a number of client applications, and the last year has been focused on getting it out there open source. So I'm going to cover the basics of RapidApp, overview and rationale, explain how it works, APIs. I'm going to try to get through that relatively quickly, though, to get to live demos and examples, which is going to be the main focus of what we're going to do, is show it in action. And then, time permitting, we'll do questions and feedback, and then the discussion will continue on IRC. There we have an IRC channel on irc.perl.org, #RapidApp. Join that, ask questions, and we'll continue from there. So RapidApp is an extension to the Catalyst stack. It aims to speed development by giving easy access to common interface paradigms, as we'll see. But it still preserves the native APIs and environments, and this is very key to the design of RapidApp from the beginning, is to not block access to all the existing conventions that are already good in Catalyst. Models, views, and controllers, all of those paradigms still work. It's aimed to be a native extension. As we'll see, it has a very flexible, uber modular design, and it has multiple declarative configuration layers on top of that, which is what I'll be showing in the demo section. And this opens up a wide range of application personalities, which is a very good feature. So basic features, it provides automatic model-driven AJAX interfaces, primarily based on XJS. And its main sort of purpose is to map DBIc methods forward through into front-end interfaces based on an extended CRUD model. And that's the main focus of what RapidApp was originally meant to do, and this is what I'll be focusing on mostly today, but it's still just one piece of a larger puzzle that includes RESTful URL navigation schemes, built-in templating and CMS functionality, asset management for CSS, JavaScript, and so on, and other GUI goodness. So the first question you might be asking for those cynics in the audience is, why another web framework? Aren't there plenty of web frameworks already that already accomplish things? What new problem does RapidApp solve that isn't already solved? And the short answer to that is interfaces. And when I say interfaces, I don't so much mean the interfaces that you want to write, interfaces from the standpoint of graphic designers who want a better drop-down box and a better GUI this or that. But the interfaces you don't want to write, all the other interfaces for back-end people who are focusing on writing data models and don't want to have to worry about doing that. I'm talking about the implicit interfaces, all those interfaces that you would like to have but do without because they're not worth the time to spend writing. Those are the kind of interfaces. The interfaces which are implied by the schema. And I'll show you what I mean by implied by the schema in a moment. But this is too difficult right now with other tools. There's lots and lots of focus on the back end, and Catalyst is great, and Dancer is great, and all these things are great in Perl, but then you still have to have interfaces and do JavaScript and HTML and CSS. And all you should have to do, though, to get to the interfaces that are implicit is ask for them. It should be as simple and straightforward as so here's an example of what I mean. Let's say you want, give me an interface to add rows to foo. And let's say that foo represents some kind of model object, like a DBIc source. Stating that and nothing else other than that should be enough to get immediately to a threshold where you automatically have a fully working form to interface to add rows, with fields for each of foo's columns, according to each column's type. Date time should be a date selector. A varchar should be a text box, and so on. Is the column non-nullable? This should be a required field. Is it a foreign key? It should automatically provide a selection paradigm to select rows from the remote source, and you shouldn't have to worry about implementation details to get to that capability. and so on. And don't be stupid. Yes, handle client-side validation. The database isn't going to let you insert a string into an integer column. The front-end interface shouldn't let you do that either. Yes, scroll content in a manner that's not moronic. Yes, display exceptions to the client if they happen. Don't silently truncate them and drop them off, and so on. And no, don't truncate column names. No, do not drown the children in the tub, or any other horrible thing that I haven't thought of but obviously don't want. Be on demand. Automatically change with the schema. If I drop a column, that field should cease to exist in the view. I shouldn't have to go in and do double work. Column change to nullable, now the field is no longer required. And obviously, handle all the plumbing to cleanly tie into the back end for all of the callbacks that need to make all this stuff work. Just work. And one more thing. Do predict and provide high-level choices and options. For instance, I mentioned a single selection dialog for a foreign key. Give me a choice where I can make that be a drop-down, for instance, which works for a limited number of rows, but obviously won't work for all cases. Provide other high-level options to do a single selection for a larger set. And beyond that, do allow me to customize and extend and build upon this base. It's not that helpful if this turnkey platform happens, but then when you want to customize something, well, you can't customize it. That accomplishes nothing at all. So it has to be extensible. So extendability was a core design goal from the beginning. But don't limit me. Just as important as what a framework provides is what it takes away. And this is where so many other frameworks that I've been frustrated with go wrong, is that once you decide to take the dive into some other framework, now you have to trust it to give you all of the paradigms that you want to get to. It has to now be re-implemented. So one of the things that's so great about Catalyst and Perl and TIMTOWTDI with Perl is you still write Perl. You still have access to all of CPAN. You don't have to reinvent things that aren't broken. That's one of the really powerful parts of Perl, of Catalyst, of the methodology, and that's a core tenet of what RapidApp does as well. You must not hinder me in any way from doing things differently and at all levels. So if the high-level choices and options aren't sufficient and the extensibility isn't sufficient, or frankly you don't want to learn the DSL to do that extendability, you should be able to still write standard Catalyst, standard Perl, and do things and have it not get in your way when you want to do other things, and that's a core. So really all I'm saying is I want everything for free with no trade-offs. Is that really so much to ask? We already take powerful declarative APIs for granted on our Perl side code. And this is how I learned that I wanted these sort of APIs. Perl spoiled me to realize how good APIs can and should behave. And being frustrated with switching to the front end and not having that same environment. It's great to program when you have lots of high-level, powerful tools at your disposal and the ecosystem of Catalyst. It makes me feel great as a developer. Developing is fun in that environment. It makes programming feel like, well, and this is how I normally feel when developing Perl until it's time to write the front side code. That's right. Programming outside of Perl, the world is still awful. And it's like going from casting bolts of lightning from your fingertips like a Jedi master to scrubbing the floor with a toothbrush. But let's be fair. There's proficiency bias. I like Perl, so I'm more proficient at Perl. CSS is great. Usually my problems usually weren't the fault of CSS. And CSS is a great, it's a very robust thing, but that's not the point. I don't want to know CSS. I don't want to know HTML. I want to write models and business logic, but I still feel entitled to have great front-end web interfaces. And that is the general theme of what RapidApp is all about and aims to do. So let's look briefly at the application architecture for RapidApp. So again, it's an extension to Catalyst, so you have your same models, views, and controllers in the same world as Catalyst. And it doesn't reinvent things that don't need reinvented. It extends the same ecosystem wherever possible. For instance, uses model schema DBIc for connecting to the DBIc backend. It uses all of the same stuff that you can use in Catalyst you have as well in your extended RapidApp environment. But then RapidApp also adds a fourth kind called a module to the mix. And these, you can sort of think of these as like a fat controller, and they are what encapsulate the plumbing necessary to do these advanced interface widgets, which include both rendering views for the front end as well as all the AJAX callbacks and everything, all the stuff that RapidApp does is AJAX. Structurally, there is an important difference to mention, is that while component classes live adjacent to each other within the application, and this is not about URL dispatch, but just where the classes live. You have multiple models, views, and controllers that all live side by side. Modules in RapidApp live in a hierarchy structure relative to one another to do this encapsulation. So there's one root module, and that root module is a controller. And in fact, that is what this whole structure looks like to the Catalyst application. It's just another controller, and it encapsulates this whole complex logic. And the way that a Catalyst application becomes a RapidApp application is through the standard plugin API. As we'll see, you simply load the RapidApp plugin, and now you have this extended environment where you can write still models, views, and controllers, but also modules that do all these powerful things. But you also don't want to have to learn another DSL. That's another thing that is a problem with other frameworks, is like, well, this sounds really cool and good, but then you have to have this big upfront cost of learning how to do the stuff that it does just to find out that it doesn't meet your needs. So there's good news for you, for those who don't want to start with this investment, is that in addition to this core base framework, on top of this, the plugin layer provides a declarative configuration layer that will actually inject and configure modules as well as component classes as well for you. And the way this is accessed is through a layers of plugins. And these layers of plugins that you can load provide high-level access to different scenarios. And they can both automatically inject and configure modules and components, but also inject and configure each other. And so then there's multiple layers that we provide that go higher and higher to jump to scenarios, and the higher and higher you go, the more declarative access you have, and then the more specialized. And we're going to show some of these plugins is what, because that's really all we have time for. We're going to actually develop some applications right here to see how this works. So you sort of have the best of both worlds with this design. Is on the one hand, you can still have a full robust DSL to customize whatever you want with this extended API stack. Or from the other end, you can get access to these high-level declarative scenarios and jump straight into common scenarios to customize things. And it's very important to note that the design is very much from the bottom up, not the top down. And this is another place where other frameworks have gone awry for me, is they start with this high-level paradigm, like a database editing tool or a blog intranet, and that's what they originally design and write, and then they want to extend other plugins and features. So now they're reaching down and breaking encapsulation and shoehorning things in, and this causes spaghetti code and the usual problems that result from that. So with RapidApp, these layers are configuration layers, not encapsulation layers. They're simply assemble the components that are already provided by the lower levels, which you could do yourself as well. So you don't have to know, not only do you not have to know the DSL for modules, you don't even have to know how Catalyst works for that matter. You can start straight at these high-level scenarios, but because they're just configuration layers, they're not changing behavior, it doesn't block you in any way from still writing controllers in combination with this, or writing modules and accomplishing best of both worlds. All right, so let's look at some actual code. So I'm going to do a demo application, and the first plugin that I'm going to show is the RapidDBIc plugin, which provides high-level database style stuff, which that's the main focus of RapidApp, but again, it's not the only thing, as we'll see, but we're going to start with that. And for a demo, I'm going to use MyDNS, the MyDNS database. How many people know what MyDNS is? A few of you. So MyDNS is this has nothing to do with, this is just for example purposes, this has nothing to do with RapidApp. It's a totally separate project. It's simply a lightweight authoritative DNS server. It's just a little C daemon that's designed to serve records directly from MySQL. It has a very simple schema, which is a good place to start. There's only 2 tables. And also there should be generally recognizable data for people in here that are familiar with DNS, which I think most people will be, but if you're not, it doesn't matter. So our task is we're going to create a web-based admin app to manage MyDNS. So let's start by looking at the MyDNS schema. Like I said, it's very simple. There's 2 tables. Here's the create table statements. Here's what that looks like as an entity diagram. And very simple common column types. There's one thing to note is they use an enum column for the different types of records. And notice that for later when we look at the automatic interfaces that are generated. And one foreign key where the RR table, which holds individual records, belongs to the SOA or start of authority table, which is all the zones that this server is authoritative for. And we have we run MyDNS. We switched from bind like 10 years ago, and it just works. It's handy. So I have we're going to bootstrap an application now, and there's nothing up my sleeves. The only thing that I've prepared in advance for this is I have a running copy of the MyDNS, MySQL database on my local system. But other than that, nothing else has been prepared in advance. Is this big enough? Let's see. Can everybody in the back see this console good? That's a little big. Okay, so how many people have worked with Catalyst? And how many people are familiar with the Catalyst helper scripts? Right, so most of you, good, great. For those who aren't familiar with it, Catalyst provides helper scripts which enable bootstrapping an application very, very quickly, which basically just creates a skeleton of files for your application, the model views and controller containers, the basic class, so you can jump straight to that. And again, since RapidApp is Catalyst, you can use the same thing to do that, but RapidApp also has its own version of that. So the Catalyst version that ships with Catalyst, Catalyst provides you a catalyst.pl script, and when you run that with no options, it displays the usage. And RapidApp ships with a, well, first of all, by the way, you need to install RapidApp, which is just a CPAN module, so all you have to do is CPAN RapidApp. And there is a lot of dependencies. Catalyst has a lot of dependencies. RapidApp has more dependencies on that, so I will warn you, this is, if it's a fresh install, this can take a while. And we're working on reducing the number of dependencies. But once you have RapidApp installed, you also now have access to the RapidApp.pl script, which is an extension to Catalyst.pl, and it has the same options as Catalyst.pl, but it also adds this additional helpers option, which are traits which adapt the behavior of the bootstrapped application to jump straight into pre-existing scenarios. This is a very, very light wrapper. It's just a configuration wrapper. You can think of it as yet another layer, another declarative layer up on top of the plugins. So there's several plugins that are available. We're going to start with the RapidDBIc plugin. And so you specify, I could specify additional plugins, comma separated here, but I'm just going to specify the one for now, and we'll look at some of the other ones later. Let me go a little smaller. And then for helpers that support command line options, you specify the double tap, which is a standard convention from load config, the standard command line tool that is available for Perl. And we have the DSN option, and what this does is you specify a standard DBI DSN string, which DBI :driver name, in this case MySQL, database name, which is MyDNS, and then database user, password, and this is, I just have the standard out of the box MySQL install, which allows a root user with an empty password to connect on localhost, which is what we're doing.
That database equals part that you've got in the example?
I'm sorry?
Do you need the database equals part that you've got in the example?
Well, that's an example. So these are some examples of different DSN strings. This is one way to specify that, but you can also specify it this way. And this is just from, this is, by the way, nothing to do with the RapidApp API. This is the DBI API, which Tim Bunce, that guy right there, is responsible for the design. So you can ask him about DSN strings. But this is exactly the same as what Catalyst does with its helper script, where would be two steps, where you would bootstrap an application and then you would create a model, and then it uses uses the schema loader, which you already, for those who were here for Fru's talk in the last hour, uses the schema loader to connect to the database, read in the schema, and then generate DBIc schema classes and a Catalyst model. And this just wraps all that into one single command. So let's run that. And of course, oops. Oh, thank you. You know, I keep on, geez, this is my own API that I wrote here, right? So we need to pick the name for, so just like catalyst.pl, we have to pick a name, and let's call it RA::MyDNS. Thank you. All right, so this will run and create the files, and we can we'll take a look at the files that it created in a second, but let's just, before we do that, let's actually fire up, without doing anything, exactly what was just created. And again, the Catalyst PL creates the scripts like the test server, which is automatically there. So this is just the test server, which we'll go ahead and fire up. And it will do a bunch of stuff and configure a bunch of stuff and start up, and it's accepting connections on localhost. All right, so let's connect localhost. All right, so here's our running application, and what RapidDBIc, remember I mentioned that these plugins configure other plugins in a hierarchy. And RapidDBIc uses a plugin called Tab GUI, which is a standard paradigm where you have a navigation tree on the left-hand side and content area on the right side. And it automatically gives us the name of whatever model DBIc schemas are set up. In this case, it automatically created one named DB, but you could have multiple model names, but this is the model name, and then an entry for each source in the database. In this case, we have RR, and SOA. And also, if you'll notice here, this is the URLs are RESTful, and back button works, and it understands the where we're at with the tabs, which are tied to URL navigation. And these actually do an AJAX call to load the content here in this tab panel section. So this sort of default out-of-the-box application is very much like an admin utility. Let's see. Let me, you know what? Yeah, I can do that. And also, and by the way, from this point forward, I have a lot of different demos to go over, and I'm just going to go for as much time as I have, and people can, from this point forward, feel free to just yell if you have a question. All right, so we'll go to, let's see if this looks better. Here, how's that? So there's, so we just, here's a good example to show some of the capabilities. So we just changed the resolution. Let's change the items per page to something that we can fit on the screen, which is just an interface. Let's see how 20 looks. Yeah, not quite. Let's do 15, right? So there we go. So we have standard pagination, sortability. It's all server side. Like for those of you who were here for Rubasushi's talk in the morning, he was talking about all those horrific limit dialects. Well, DBIc solves that problem, and then RapidApp solves the problem of bringing that forward into interfaces so you don't have to worry about that stuff. So we can have, this is all an AJAX interface, we can rearrange columns, we can select columns that we want to have and change them. First page, last page, refresh. We can auto size columns, all sorts of handy stuff, right? So there's also, out of the box, we have a very powerful query builder, which is, if you saw there at the bottom corner, there's a filters button, which opens our multi-filter dialog. And we can add conditions like, for instance, we can say, let's say zone, and it understands based on the options that are available in this, the second choice is based on what the schema of the column is for what makes sense. So zone actually is a numeric, so it's going to give numeric options. Name is a text, so it's going to give text specific choices. And so like we can, you know, contains, that's probably one, save and close, and then boom, there's our result, and we can see, and also if you see here at the bottom, it shows the current page, it's 1 through 15 of 30 total. And when filters are active, you see that there's this little pencil, and the number of filters that are active shows up. And it also understands, remember, it has a enum column for the type. So I can add another condition. I can say type, and I have the standard. It is a text-based column. I have those standard access to those. But then there's also is here at the bottom, which is special, which is it automatically gives a selector based on all the possible enum values of that. So I don't have to think about what's available. It knows what's available. So let's say everything that is MX, type MX, and there's the records that relate to that.
Can you multi-select those?
Yes, which we'll do for editing. Yeah, and we'll show that in a minute. I don't have editability enabled yet. That's a change. It does not out of the box automatically make it so that you can clobber your database. It makes it so you do have to ask. You have to say, yes, I want to edit the database before it automatically does that. And we'll jump into the code and we'll see that in a second. But then there's also, we have a quick search dialog, which let me delete these, save and close. I can type in the quick search as well to filter things, and I can select which column I want to search. You use normal and exact, whether like by default it's going to do a like with a contains. You can change it to, which that can be slow depending on how many rows you have. You can do an exact where it'll want an exact match. So if I do exact mode, nothing is exactly equal to vision. And I can select which which columns to search on and toggle and say, I want to just search for name. And then it'll tell you what's happening, that I'm doing an exact search for name, or I'm going to do an exact search on name or data. And so it shows that it's doing an exact search on 2 columns.
Yeah, it actually went blurry when you went 800 by 600. So.
Oh, it's gone. Oh, OK. So he's telling me that since I switched to 800 by 600 to make it bigger, it needs to. I'm going to need to go back to. Thank you for letting me know that. Go back to. 24. So let's come back to here. So for the
Control plus.
yeah, but see the problem with Control plus is it. I mean, yes, that worked, but that's yes, but that changes CSS and whatnot, which is not. You know, this is a. We can start with that, but if it starts being an issue, I'll maybe change it. But I mean, yeah, I mean, it does work, as you can see, that it is working, but I can't guarantee it's going to work everywhere in that context like that. Okay, so does anybody have any questions about this so far? All right, so let's talk about relationships quickly. So relationships are one of the very powerful capabilities of DBIc. And in RapidApp, we represent every relationship as a column, as some kind of column representation of that relationship. So in this case, zone is a foreign key, but it is also a relationship. So you see that we have these little magnifying glass links, and that shows up in relationship columns so that you can actually go to the related object. Also, by the way, you can, and this is, I'm not going to be able to get into it with my time that I have today, but this is just a base. You can extend these views into all sorts of custom applications, but we obviously don't have time to get into all that today. We're going to be using the out-of-the-box stuff. But this is a totally customizable thing, which is the multi-relationship data store-driven module view. And then there's single relationship views, which if we double-click, it will open the row page, which is a representation of just one row. And again, this is all RESTful URLs in the URL navigation. So the magnified link jumps straight to the related row. So that's a belongs to, which is the single relationship side. The other side of a belongs to, as you just learned from Fru, is a multi-relationship or a has many. So if we look on the other side for SOA rows, and let's customize some columns. We don't need to see all of these things. They have, in this case, RRS, and this comes from the relationship name in DBIc that was generated. In the schema loader, it picked the name RRS to be the plural version of RR. So this is the has many. So and each SOA row has many RR rows. And this is a virtualized column. And by default, it displays an aggregate function view. In this case, it's a count. And that can actually be changed. The API supports changing to have a different aggregate function. But by default, it's a count. So we can see that IntelliTrue.com has 67 records. CMGC has 11, and so on. And then this, if you follow this link, that will then open to a grid view of just those rows. So, sure. Yep. And you absolutely can. Awesome. Right? So there you can see that Intree.net has the most rows. Now I will caution you that this is a virtual subselect that it's doing. So it is brute force. We have a very small number of rows here, but we've successfully used RapidApp for backends with 10 million rows, and you can you have the capability to turn that off, and you probably want to turn that sortability off. If you have 10 million rows and you try to sort by that, that's going to, kill your. All right.
If you hide the column, are you skipping and returning the data from the backend?
If what?
If you hide the column, are you not returning the data from the backend?
Had that? What do you mean had?
If you hide the column.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Absolutely. It only selects. That's right. That's right. Unless you sort it. So, like for instance, I've hidden it. However, I still have the sort in place, so it is still selecting that column to sort based on that. But if I now change the sort, now that query now is no longer fetching that column. Yes, absolutely. Everything is, it is relying, again, one of the main principles of RapidApp is it's not trying to reinvent things that aren't broken. One of the things that's great about DBIc is that it is not really a full ORM, because you don't want a full translation into objects, because a relational database is a powerful, useful thing. You want to do joins, and it's not, the idea of I want to not have to think about relational database concepts means that you're hiding yourself off from really, really powerful features that databases provide. So DBIc has already done so many powerful things that RapidApp doesn't want to reinvent those things. It wants to extend these powerful capabilities into front ends. So any other questions on that?
Show off the what do you call it, fixed filters, where you freeze filters?
Yeah, well that's, you can do that when you get into permissions, but I only have 20 minutes left, and I want to get to other things. So this is a very big, deep topic. By the way, he works for me, so I don't have to answer his question.
I was asking if you wanted to show it.
Yes, right. Right, just so that we're clear on that. And this is, you can drag this interface around and whatnot. So let's jump into the code and see the code that actually got created. So we created here sets of files. So we have the lib directory. Again, for those of you who are familiar with RapidApp, with Catalyst, will be familiar with the skeleton structure that was created. We have the main class file that was created. Oh, that's the schema, sorry. The main class file that was created, the only thing that is, there's the whole thing, basically the application, is it's loading the RapidDBIc plugin. And then it puts some boilerplate information in here, and there's actually nothing configured here, but it tells you how you can change the root module namespace for where it's mounted. So like by default, you notice here that in our application, this is starting at /, which is, this is the paradigm where this is just an application, and this is its only purpose is to do that. But as we'll see in a minute, a lot of other cases is you already have an application, you want to use this as an admin section for an existing application. And that's what I'm going to, the next app that I'm going to show, which will probably be, use up my time by the time I get through that, will be mounted, and so you can mount that somewhere else, and so you change that value, and then it'll be mounted on that. So if I set that to ADM, then that whole module namespace will start at /ADM, or whatever you want it to be, it'll be mounted there. But we're not going to do that just yet, right now. So for RapidDBIc, once you load it, you have to configure it. You either can specify a config key for plugin : RapidApp : RapidDBIc and specify a config there, or it will simply look at all of the models in the application, and if any model has a RapidDBIc config key specified, then it automatically will express that model in the interface. And so like in this case, our model name is DB, and that's why it was DB in the tree. So there's some boilerplate options in here. And one of the things that it immediately already shows you how to do is to turn on editability. And we have this, and this is part of the sort of DSL that RapidApp has, is we have access to include our columns for read, update, create, and destroy based on this call spec concept, which is a set of wildcards. Star means include all of the all of the local columns. But then you can also specify joins in this syntax also. So you could, for instance, specify to join the zone through the zone relationship. You could say zone.star would then include all of the columns of that. And actually, I'm typing that here in the grid param section. Specifies the configs that will be supplied to the grid component that is in the interface. And table specs, which I'll show in just a second, are an internal name for extra metadata associated with a given source. And since time is already flying, I'm going to go ahead and show that right now. What sort of metadata would that be? So if you saw if you remember here in the interface, we have zone, and this is our related object, but this is the foreign key 203. That's not very friendly or useful. Well, what are you going to do with that? One solution is we can join to the zone column and see columns directly of the zone relationship, or we can set the display column, which will for that source to say which column we want to show for that relationship. And this will make sense when I do it here in just a second. So we have it automatically gives you the section, and this is divided by, the config is divided by sources. And the same thing goes for grid params. You can divide it by sources. So you can say RRs, and I can override a setting, RR. So like, for instance, I can change that here, and you can actually do evil things like that and just join every single relationship that it has, every column of every relationship that it has, which is fine in our case because there's not that many, but you can get into really gnarly stuff if you have like a whole lot of relationships. But it's there for you if you want to do it. And and there's little comments that explain the star defaults applies to all the sources at once, or you specify the source name. So we can specify different options, and there's a whole bunch of different options, and there is documentation on this RapidApp manual for these options. I'm just sort of giving you a taste very quickly of these things because there's lots of things that we could dive into, and there's not time for all of that. But anyway, back to what I was talking about over here. So these table specs allow us to specify certain attributes that go above and beyond the metadata information that we already get from the schema, like nullability and column type and relationship type and whatnot. One of them is display column. And we can change that to a useful column name. And as you'll see how this takes effect, is it means, Yes. We have a server named Orion, and so I'm used to typing that. Thank you, appreciate that. And we can also, let's go ahead and we're going to make turn on editability, and include the updatable, creatable, and destroyable follow the same syntax. And yes, you can even do joins through this here, and it will do the thing that you specify, and that can get powerful and dangerous. And the destroyable rel spec setting actually applies to relationship names, not column names, because a destroy operation applies to an entire row. So if you specify a chain of things in here, you're basically redoing cascade deletes, which you probably don't want to do. You're probably better off doing that in the database. But you can do it if you want to do it. You have the capability to do it for completeness. So we've turned that on. We've set display column. Let's save this and let's restart. Yeah, I'm going to be out of time, so I'm going to very quickly. So then you can actually right-click and reload, or reload the whole interface. But it's all Ajax, so I didn't. I can do that, or I can reload the whole thing. And by the way, these links work from the outside, so I can reload the whole thing, and guess what? It jumps straight to that tab because it's all tied in. These are this RESTful URL navigation is all tied in. Anyway, if you notice here now that the zone column doesn't have those numbers anymore, now it has a name and this name is the value of origin, which is what we specified as the display column. So it displays that instead of the default display column. So once editability is on, you see there's lots of different interfaces for editing. We can toggle to edit directly inline. And by the way, if we edit a relationship column, it is going to open a dialog, a selection dialog to do that. And this is actually a nested grid. And I can actually add another row on the fly and select it. And all kinds of stuff like that. And I can search and select a different thing, change the zone. And you asked about multi-select. So let's say that we're about to do a DNS change. And so we want to change multiple records at once. I can set up a, let's take a look at, I'm going to grab this IP address. Let's say I want to see all of the, oops. Let's say I want to look for all of the records that have that IP address. I can search for data is equal to that. Right? And now there's all of the rows that are related to that. So let's say I want to change those at once. I can go through and change all of them. If I turn on cell editing, I can type and change them individually. Or I can say options batch modify all active records. And let's say we want to change the data to 91. Apply changes. And it'll take a second. There, I didn't click it right. So, and everything disappeared, and the reason everything disappeared because it now no longer matches our filter. It's now 191. So now there they are, boom, they're that. So there's all kinds of capabilities. All right, so obviously this is a great admin interface, but we don't want this to be open to the entire world. So we have, let's add another plugin. Let's add authcore. And you probably want, and this will automatically set up Catalyst plugin authentication sessions, and it will automatically deploy a database to do that, and it'll do it all for you. And then you probably want to be able to administer the users. I was going to do this in 2 steps, but I don't have time. So I'm going to do it together. I can do, so let's take that. And now if we restart, now we have to log in. And by default, it will create username admin password. And because I added the core schema admin, it gives me, it just basically just gives a RapidDBIc config for the database. So you can see the users, and you can, and this uses the authn passphrase column stuff that Fru actually talked about is in there, and it automatically does that. And in the last fledgling seconds that I have, I am going to show you, so I went to a hackathon a couple weeks ago where we built an application on the fly, and I worked with several other developers. And we developed an application for the idea of this entrepreneur thing is you ship boxes and they get stored and they send them back to you, sort of like pods but for small boxes. And so for the demo, I worked with HTML guys and CSS guys, and they just, my internet connection is terribly slow, unfortunately. I was going to check it out and run it. But, all right, well, there we go. So you can log in. There was these screens where you could order, ship, retrieve, and these were all marked up by regular. This is jQuery and Bootstrap. It has nothing to do with XJS. I told the guys that were writing this, don't bother, don't just write whatever, and then I'll templatize it. And then you can go into the site administration section where you get this sort of section. And I didn't get a chance to get into the template controller stuff where you can actually edit content on the fly in place. And there's a whole, and you can manage, do all that stuff. And then also the other thing that I wanted to show, and then I will finish, is back on the outside. Let's say that for rapid deployment, for prototyping, you didn't have time to finish those interfaces, and you want an interface on the outside. Here's an example where here's one of those modules that you can just reach into and grab and have in the context of your standard markup by using iframes. So obviously there's a lot more stuff to RapidApp than what I just showed. But are there any questions? Which I am out of time. I'm over time. So any questions? Please come and join Pound RapidApp and ask me questions and play with it, and I will help you with any questions that you have. I'm always on IRC. Thank you very much.